The story begins in the austere and turbulent landscape of the American Midwest during the Great Depression, where a child enters the world in 1934 to a teenage mother ill-equipped for the burdens of parenthood. This boy, Charles, finds himself immediately cast into a life defined by instability and transient affection. In the rugged environs of Kentucky and Ohio, he navigates a childhood marked by the conspicuous absence of a father and the erratic presence of a mother who often prioritizes her own social engagements over maternal duties. The boy spends his formative years shuffled between the homes of relatives and neighbors, often instructed to play outside in the dark and cold while his mother entertains a revolving door of male visitors. An early lesson in the harsh mechanics of respect and violence arrives when Charles is sent to live with an uncle. Small for his age and frequently targeted by bullies, the boy runs home one afternoon in tears after a beating. Instead of comfort, he receives a stinging blow to the head from his uncle, who views the tears as cowardice. The uncle devises a humiliating punishment designed to force a confrontation. The next day, Charles must attend school wearing a girl's dress. The instruction is explicit: he is to remain in the dress until he fights back. Fueled by shame and the uncle's mandate, Charles attacks his tormentor the moment school ends, beating the larger boy until adults intervene. The victory is Pyrrhic but instructive, planting the seed of a lifelong philosophy that force is the only reliable shield against humiliation. Another pivotal trauma occurs in the damp basement of a foster home, where a severe matriarch orders the young boy to slaughter a rabbit. The child, possessing an innate sensitivity to animals, recoils at the command, pleading to spare the creature. The foster mother remains unyielding, forcing the knife into his hand. The visceral horror of the act, the animal's screams, and the blood leave a permanent scar on his psyche, fostering a deep-seated resentment toward human authority and a paradoxical, protective identification with the vulnerability of the natural world. As adolescence approaches, the boy's life fractures further. His mother's imprisonment for armed robbery leaves him essentially orphaned to the state, beginning a cycle of institutionalization that will consume the majority of his life. He drifts into juvenile delinquency, discovering a talent for theft and deception. In Indiana and across state lines, he masters the art of hot wiring automobiles, learning quickly which models yield the highest profit and how to transport them across borders. His criminal education is punctuated by moments of bizarre danger, such as a botched arms deal on a houseboat where he attempts to sell guns lacking firing pins, forcing a desperate escape into the water to avoid retribution. By the early 1960s, Charles is a young man confined within the federal penitentiary system at McNeil Island in Washington state. This period serves as his true university, a time of intense intellectual and social accumulation where he refines the skills that will later define his magnetism. He encounters a diverse array of mentors among the inmate population, each imparting specialized knowledge. A doctor imprisoned for tax evasion introduces him to the mechanics of the human mind through hypnotism. Intrigued by the power of suggestion, Charles undergoes sessions to cure his own heavy smoking habit, learning how a relaxed, trance-like state can render a person pliable to external command. He absorbs the principles of control, realizing that the subconscious is a backdoor to authority. Simultaneously, he delves into alternative religious philosophies. A fellow prisoner introduces him to the tenets of Scientology, and together they pore over books, dissecting the systems of belief that drive human behavior. Charles studies the techniques of ministers and preachers, not out of spiritual devotion, but with a clinical interest in how they captivate and direct their congregations. He asks pointed questions about the dynamics of leadership, fascinated by the ability of a single figure to command the loyalty and labor of the many. He learns that confidence, rather than academic credentialing, is the linchpin of influence. His education extends to the physical realm as well. He observes a Chinese inmate practicing martial arts in the yard and, through persistent charm, breaks down the man's distrust of white prisoners. He receives training in discipline and movement, adding physical poise to his growing psychological arsenal. In a similar fashion, he befriends an aging former Olympian who teaches him fencing, demonstrating how a master can penetrate defenses with minimal effort. These lessons in leverage, mental, spiritual, and physical, coalesce into a formidable personal power. Even within the prison's racial stratifications, Charles navigates with unusual fluidity. He forms a bond with a formidable Native American inmate known for violence, using shared stories of nature and the environment to forge an alliance. This connection grants him entry into the prison's Native American circle, where he participates in sweat lodge ceremonies and is eventually accorded the rare honorary role of spiritual advisor, a testament to his chameleon-like ability to mirror the values and needs of those around him. Yet, the outside world remains a source of pain. During a visitation, he gives his mother his meager savings with a specific request to buy him a guitar. When she returns empty-handed, having spent the money on herself, the betrayal severs his remaining emotional tether to conventional familial bonds. He turns fully to the prison environment as his home, honing his musical skills on his own and finding solace in the abstract world of chords and lyrics rather than human relationships. In 1967, the prison doors open. Charles stands at the threshold of freedom, gripping a terrifying realization: he does not want to leave. The institution has become his womb, his shelter, and his known universe. He petitions the officials to let him stay, confessing his fear of a world he no longer understands, but the system expels him. He steps onto the ferry and travels to San Francisco, drifting into the epicenter of the counterculture revolution. The Haight-Ashbury district in the Summer of Love provides the perfect camouflage for an ex-convict with a grudge against the establishment. Charles finds himself surrounded by a generation of runaways and seekers who share his disdain for societal norms. He blends seamlessly into the milieu of long hair, drugs, and radical philosophy. Utilizing the skills sharpened at McNeil Island, he begins to attract a circle of young women, many of whom are damaged, adrift, or estranged from their own families. He identifies their insecurities with a predator's precision, offering them protection, identity, and a father figure who demands nothing but total allegiance. He names this growing collective the Family, a moniker that binds them in a web of manufactured intimacy. They acquire an old school bus, retrofitting it into a mobile commune that traverses the West Coast. Charles preaches a doctrine of liberation, instructing his followers to shed their egos and inhibitions. He uses his guitar and his voice to weave spells of connection, positioning himself as a spiritual conduit. He tests their loyalty through orchestration, encouraging drug use while maintaining a level of sobriety himself to ensure control. He creates an atmosphere where his word is the only compass, navigating the group away from conventional morality. As the idealism of the Haight sours into squalor, the family migrates south to the fringes of Los Angeles. They inhabit the Spahn movie ranch, a dilapidated set used for westerns, where they live in a semi-feral state. Charles's ambition turns toward the music industry. He brushes shoulders with fame, briefly moving into the home of a famous drummer from the Beach Boys. He experiences the lavish excesses of Hollywood, receiving gifts like a Ferrari which he promptly gives away, reinforcing his image as a man detached from material greed. Yet, the rejection comes. The music industry insiders ultimately dismiss him, treating him as a curiosity rather than a peer. The doors to stardom slam shut, curdling his philosophy into something darker and more apocalyptic. The atmosphere at the ranch grows increasingly paranoid and sinister. Charles begins to speak of an inevitable race war, a cataclysm he names after a song by the Beatles. He prepares his followers for survival, stockpiling weapons and transforming the commune into a paramilitary unit. He conducts drills, teaching the girls to be silent and lethal. The preaching shifts from love and freedom to death and fear. He manipulates the group's reality, creating a closed loop where external threats are omnipresent and he is the only savior. In August 1969, the tension reaches its breaking point. Charles dispatches a group of his most devoted followers on a mission into the hills of Los Angeles. He does not go with them, but his will is the engine driving the car. They arrive at a secluded estate on Cielo Drive, the home of an actress and her friends. What ensues is a night of unimaginable brutality. The followers, operating under the directive to leave a scene of total devastation, butcher the occupants with knives and firearms. They scrawl cryptic messages on the walls in the victims' blood, symbols intended to incite the societal chaos Charles has prophesied. The following night, dissatisfied with the chaotic execution of the first attack, Charles personally joins the group to hunt for new victims. They select the home of a wealthy grocer and his wife. Charles enters the residence, ties up the terrified couple, and assures them they will not be harmed. He then exits, leaving his followers to finish the gruesome work. They stab the couple to death, carving words into flesh and turning the mundane setting of a suburban home into a slaughterhouse. The violence shatters the psyche of Los Angeles. Panic spreads through the canyons and the studios. The police investigation initially falters, failing to connect the bloody scenes to the band of hippies living at the old movie ranch. For a brief window, Charles stands at the peak of his terrible power, a puppet master who has successfully orchestrated a nightmare from the shadows. However, the unraveling is swift. Members of the family are arrested on unrelated charges of auto theft and vandalism. In custody, their discipline fractures. Boasts are whispered to cellmates. Details leak to the authorities. The connection is made. Charles is apprehended and brought to trial in a spectacle that captivates the nation. He transforms the courtroom into a theater of the absurd, carving an X into his forehead to signify his removal from society. He disrupts the proceedings with outbursts and riddles, reveling in the attention even as the evidence mounts against him. He is convicted of multiple counts of murder and conspiracy, the jury rejecting his claim that he is innocent simply because he did not wield the knife himself. The judge sentences him to death, ordering him to be transported to San Quentin State Prison to await execution in the gas chamber. The transition from the wild freedom of the desert ranch to the concrete tomb of death row marks the definitive end of his era as a free man. Charles enters the prison system not as the anonymous delinquent he was in the 50s, but as America's icon of evil, a celebrity monster whose name induces shivering fear. He is placed in a solitary cell, isolated from the general population, condemned to die. However, fate twists once more. A change in state law abolishes the death penalty, commuting his sentence to life imprisonment. The specter of the gas chamber vanishes, replaced by the grim prospect of an endless existence in a cage. Charles adapts, as he always has. He transforms his cell into his new kingdom, continuing to manipulate, creating art from trash, and cultivating a reputation that keeps guards and inmates alike on edge. He requests and receives a guitar, arguing that even a condemned man has a right to his music. He settles into the rhythm of the institution, a spider sitting at the center of a web that can no longer expand, but remains sticky and dangerous. Before we move on, please subscribe to our channel, The Recaps, and hit like if you enjoy our videos. Also, don't forget to share this with your friends and family. Let's get back to it. Decades drift by in the claustrophobic rhythm of the California penal system. Charles navigates the treacherous currents of prison politics, moving from the imposing fortress of San Quentin to the medical facility in Vacaville. His notoriety acts as both a shield and a target. In San Quentin, he faces death threats from powerful gangs, necessitating his segregation for protective custody. He learns to use his reputation as a weapon, projecting an aura of unpredictability that keeps potential aggressors at bay. When accused of being an informant, he stands his ground against physically superior inmates, relying on sheer nerve to survive the confrontation. Later, in the medical facility, he feigns madness and belligerence to manipulate the staff, turning interactions with psychiatrists into theatrical performances where he claims the title of doctor for himself. He battles health issues, real and imagined, ranging from the effects of a lifetime of smoking to the creeping suspicion of cancer, all while refusing the medications urged upon him by the state. He eventually arrives at Corcoran State Prison, a modern super-maximum security facility designed to house the state's most dangerous and high-profile offenders. Here, in the security housing unit, he is locked away in a concrete box, a living ghost haunting the edges of the public consciousness. Parallel to Charles's stagnant timeline, a younger man named Guillermo Mendez carves his own violent path through the correctional system. A former gang associate who has stepped away from the collective security of the organization, Mendez operates as a lone wolf, driven by a volatile mixture of pride and aggression. He is a man who refuses to submit, viewing every interaction as a contest of dominance. His journey leads him to Mule Creek State Prison, where he is housed with a cellmate convicted of crimes against children. For Mendez, this proximity is an intolerable insult. He harbors a visceral hatred for those who prey on the innocent, viewing them as beneath contempt. The tension in the cell festers, exacerbated by the claustrophobia of confinement. The inevitable explosion occurs after Mendez brews a batch of illicit prison wine, fermenting fruit and sugar in the toilet bowl until it transforms into a potent intoxicant. Drunk and fueled by a righteous fury, he decides to purge the cell of his unwanted companion. He attacks with a homemade weapon, a crude shank fashioned from plastic and razor blades, stabbing and beating the man in a frenzy of bloodlust. He revels in the violence, painting his own face with the victim's blood in a primal display of victory before alerting the guards. The assault is brutal and decisive, earning him a transfer to a higher security level. He is designated for the security housing unit at Corcoran, the same stark concrete warehouse that holds the aging leader of the Manson family. Mendez arrives at Corcoran in chains, pushing a cart containing his meager worldly possessions. The heat of the Central Valley beats down on the scorched earth surrounding the prison, a stark contrast to the sterile, air-conditioned chill of the building he enters. He is escorted by guards who view him with a mixture of boredom and wariness. As he shuffles through the corridors, a guard informs him of his destination, dropping the name of his famous neighbor as a warning or perhaps a taunt. Mendez feigns indifference, determined not to show intimidation. He is placed in a cell identical to the ones he has known for years: gray walls, a steel toilet, and a heavy door with a narrow slot for food trays. He is alone, separated from the rest of humanity by layers of steel and concrete, left to contemplate the silence. It is in this silence that the relationship begins. A voice drifts through the ventilation system and the concrete walls, raspy and aged. The neighbor introduces himself simply as Charles. Mendez, initially skeptical, engages the voice, treating the interaction with the guarded caution of a convict who knows that names and reputations are often fabricated behind bars. He waits for a visual confirmation, peering through the narrow window of his cell door when the tier is active. He sees the small, stooped figure of an old man, the gray beard, and the faint, infamous swastika etched into the forehead. The reality settles in. He is living beside the boogeyman of the 20th century. The dynamic between the two men develops slowly, constructed through shouting matches, whispered confidences, and the physical exchange of goods via fish line. This contraption, a string weighted with a makeshift anchor, allows them to swing small packages from one cell to another during the brief intervals when the guards are inattentive. Charles initiates the commerce, sending over a welcome package of coffee and pastries. It is a gesture of brotherhood that disarms Mendez, who expects manipulation but receives generosity. Charles bestows a nickname upon his new neighbor, calling him Boxcar, in homage to the transient spirit of a hobo, a wanderer who rides the rails of life without a destination. The name sticks, a badge of acceptance into Charles's exclusive, microscopic world. Life in the security housing unit is a monotony of routine, broken only by the erratic behavior of its most famous resident. Mendez watches as Charles orchestrates a chaotic symphony of disruption. The old man rails against the guards, engaging in screaming matches that echo through the tier. He creates elaborate fictions to confuse and unsettle the staff, claiming to be visited by spirits or asserting his authority over the very air they breathe. He protests the conditions of his confinement with a theatrical flair, turning a grievance about soap powder on the floor into a grandstand about environmental poisoning. Mendez observes this performance art with growing fascination, realizing that Charles uses craziness as a shield, a way to maintain agency in a system designed to strip it away. The two men spend hours talking through the walls, their conversations meandering from the banal to the metaphysical. Charles acts as a guru, imparting his twisted wisdom to a willing disciple. He preaches a philosophy of oneness, asserting that individual identity is an illusion and that all people are part of a single, fluid consciousness. He speaks of the environment, articulating a deep, almost religious reverence for air, trees, water, and animals, an acronym he treats as a sacred text. He rails against the destruction of the natural world, positioning himself as a guardian of the earth who has been imprisoned by a society intent on suicide. Mendez listens, absorbing the lessons, finding a strange comfort in the old man's certainty. Their bond is tested by the friction of proximity. Arguments flare up over petty slights, fueled by the stress of isolation. In moments of anger, Charles turns vindictive, using his influence with the guards to harass Mendez, creating minor miseries like shortened showers or withheld food. Mendez retaliates with pranks, jiggling the lock on Charles's door to startle him or feigning madness to draw the attention of the psychiatric staff. These skirmishes are intense but fleeting, followed by reconciliations sealed with the exchange of contraband or a shared laugh at the absurdity of their situation. They develop a codependency, a shared reality that exists only within the few cubic feet of space they occupy. Charles reveals his artistic side, demonstrating a remarkable ingenuity with the limited materials available to a prisoner. He fashions intricate sculptures of spiders and scorpions using nothing but toilet paper, water, and dye extracted from pens or food. He weaves threads from boxer shorts into strings for a functional harp, tuning it to play haunting, pluck-why melodies in the dead of night. He gifts these creations to Mendez, who marvels at the craftsmanship. The art becomes a currency of affection, a tangible proof of Charles's complex inner life. Mendez paints the sculptures, participating in the creative process, and in doing so, binds himself closer to the artist. The relationship deepens as Charles shares fragments of his past, peeling back the layers of myth to reveal the human being underneath. He recounts stories of his time in other prisons, of the people he has met and the lessons he has learned. He speaks of the 1960s not as a historical event, but as a personal memory, describing the freedom of the desert and the betrayal of the counterculture. He denies responsibility for the violence that defines his public image, framing himself as a scapegoat for a society looking to absolve itself of its own sins. Mendez, while not entirely convinced of Charles's innocence, begins to see the man as a tragic figure, a product of a broken system rather than a monster. He defends Charles against the disrespect of other inmates, adopting the role of protector and loyalist. One particular incident cements their alliance. A guard, known for his hostility toward Charles, deliberately leaves a residue of cleaning chemicals in front of the old man's cell, aggravating his respiratory issues. Mendez, seizing an opportunity during his own cleaning time, scrubs the floor with obsessive care, removing the irritant. It is a simple act of service, but in the context of the prison code, it is a declaration of loyalty. Charles acknowledges the gesture with a quiet gratitude, validating Mendez's status as a trusted insider. They toast each other with cups of lukewarm water or illicit wine, celebrating their defiance of the world outside. The atmosphere on the tier is charged with the unpredictable energy of Charles's moods. He creates moments of surreal terror, such as donning a makeshift Ku Klux Klan robe fashioned from prison whites to parade in front of the cells, a silent, menacing provocation that nearly incites a riot among the diverse population. He screams threats at invisible enemies, channeling a primal rage that silences the block. Yet, he also shows moments of profound vulnerability, weeping over the memory of a rabbit he was forced to kill as a child or expressing a childlike wonder at a moth that flutters into the unit. Mendez learns to navigate these shifts, becoming an expert in the geography of Charles's mind. As months turn into a year, Mendez realizes that his identity is becoming inextricably linked to his neighbor. He is no longer just another convict. He is the confidant of Charles Manson, the last member of a family that ceased to exist decades ago. He basks in the reflected notoriety, enjoying the deference of guards and the curiosity of other prisoners. Charles encourages this, telling Mendez that he is now part of history. The old man shares his mail, a relentless avalanche of letters from fans, haters, and seekers, allowing Mendez to glimpse the bizarre hold Charles still exerts on the public imagination. They laugh together at the absurdity of the requests, for locks of hair, for spiritual guidance, for connection, forging a bond of shared superiority over the brain-dead masses outside. The turning point arrives when Mendez realizes the depth of his emotional reliance on the old man. He finds himself delaying his own potential transfer, a move that would improve his living conditions, simply to remain in the orbit of Charles's charisma. He creates a mental fortress where the two of them stand against the administration, the other inmates, and the world. He adopts Charles's language, his mannerisms, and his worldview. The line between the manipulator and the manipulated blurs. Mendez is no longer just observing the legend. He is participating in it, feeding the feedback loop of Charles's ego while deriving a sense of purpose from his proximity to power. However, the reality of prison is transience. Rumors of transfers and administrative changes begin to circulate, threatening to rupture the bubble they have created. The system, indifferent to human connection, grinds forward. Mendez feels the precariousness of their arrangement. He knows that his time in the security housing unit is finite, and the inevitable separation looms like a physical threat. The intensity of their interaction reaches a fever pitch, with every conversation carrying the weight of a potential farewell. They spend nights whispering through the vents, reinforcing their pact of loyalty, trying to freeze time in the gray concrete box. Charles imparts his final lessons on survival, on fear, and on the nature of reality, trying to imprint his consciousness onto Mendez before the bond is severed. Mendez absorbs it all, aware that he is being shaped by a master sculptor, yet unable and unwilling to pull away. Before we move on, please subscribe to our channel, The Recaps, and hit like if you enjoy our videos. Also, Don't forget to share this with your friends and family. Let's get back to it. The inevitable machinery of the prison administration finally grinds into motion, signaling the end of the stasis that has held Guillermo Mendez and Charles Manson in its grip. After months of delays, rumors, and the unpredictable ebb and flow of institutional bureaucracy, the request for a transfer is approved. The news arrives not as a joyous liberation, but as a complex severance. Mendez stands in his cell, the concrete box that has been his entire world and his university, and feels the weight of the impending departure. The frustration with the Corcoran administration, with its erratic schedules and canceled yard times, had driven him to seek a way out, to find a facility where the rhythm of life might be more predictable. Yet now, facing the reality of leaving, the relief is poisoned by a profound sense of loss. He looks at the gray walls that separate him from his neighbor and realizes that moving just a few hundred miles away will place him in a different universe, one where the raspy voice of the old man will no longer reach him in the night. The process of packing is a ritual of dismantling a life. Mendez gathers his few possessions, the books, the letters, and the remaining pieces of art that haven't been confiscated in shakedowns. Each item carries a memory of the tear, a tangible link to the surreal existence he is leaving behind. He thinks of the spider made of toilet paper and the scorpion painted black, tokens of a friendship that defies the logic of the outside world. He prepares to leave the only person who has made the isolation of the security housing unit bearable, the man who has been simultaneously a father figure, a brother, and a chaotic mentor. The emotional tether is pulled taut, vibrating with the tension of unsaid goodbyes. In the brutal economy of prison life, transfers are common, and farewells are usually cursory, but this separation feels like an amputation. Mendez is shackled and escorted out of the building, the metal of his chains chiming a discordant rhythm against the floor. He leaves behind the smells of the tier, the specific quality of the light filtering through the fortified windows, and the presence of the most notorious inmate in America. He boards the transport bus, a steel cage on wheels that will carry him across the scorched landscape of California to his new destination. As the prison recedes in the distance, shrinking until it is just another complex of fences and towers in the heat shimmer, Mendez feels the physical reality of the distance growing between him and Charles. The journey is a transition zone, a limbo where he hangs suspended between the intense, high-gravity orbit of Manson and the unknown future that awaits him. Arrival at Pleasant Valley State Prison brings a sensory shock. The new facility, though structurally similar in the way all prisons are, feels alien. The air smells different. The sounds of the tier are composed of strange voices and unfamiliar rhythms. Mendez navigates the intake procedures with the practiced numbness of a veteran convict, but beneath the surface, he is reeling. He is assigned a new cell, a new concrete rectangle that looks like the old one but feels utterly empty. He lies on his new bunk, staring at the ceiling, waiting for a tap on the wall or a shout from the vent that he knows will never come. The silence is deafening. There are no late-night lectures on environmental philosophy, no erratic concerts played on a steel sink, no sudden rages against the system to break the monotony. He is just another inmate in a warehouse of men, anonymous and alone. The first few weeks are a period of acute withdrawal. Mendez finds himself reaching out for a presence that isn't there, his mind reflexively formulating questions or jokes for an audience that has vanished. He burns with a nostalgia that surprises him in its intensity. He replays the conversations in his head, clinging to the advice and the stories, terrified that they might fade with time. He realizes that the old man had occupied a massive space in his psyche, filling the void of confinement with his colossal personality. Without that external force to push against, Mendez feels adrift. He has to relearn how to be solitary, how to occupy his own mind without the constant stimulation of Charles's games and dramas. Distance, however, brings a new clarity. Removed from the immediate force field of Charles's charisma, the silver tongue begins to tarnish. In the quiet of Pleasant Valley, Mendez starts to examine the legacy of his friend with a critical eye. He recalls the stories that had mesmerized him, the tales of strength and survival that had seemed so irrefutable in the heat of the moment. He picks them apart, testing them against the cold logic of hindsight. He remembers Charles's boast about being born on the same day the Marine Corps was founded, a claim that added a mythic layer of toughness to his persona. Curious, Mendez checks the facts and discovers the lie. The dates do not match. The fabrication is small, but it pulls at a thread that threatens to unravel the entire tapestry. Mendez begins to see the manipulator behind the mentor. He recognizes that many of the stories, while entertaining, were calculated performances designed to elicit specific reactions: fear, awe, sympathy, or loyalty. He sees the controller at work, the man who viewed every interaction as a transaction of power. He realizes that the demand for absolute truth that Charles placed on others was a rule he did not always apply to himself. The realization is not a betrayal but a maturing. Mendez understands that he was groomed, that his eagerness for a father figure made him an easy target for a man who had spent a lifetime mastering the art of influence. He sees the strings that were attached to the gifts, the tests of loyalty that were really exercises in dominance. Yet, this deconstruction does not lead to hatred. Mendez weighs the manipulation against the genuine kindness he experienced and finds that the scale still tips in Charles's favor. He remembers the food shared when he was hungry, the protection offered against the guards, and the encouragement to pursue his art. He acknowledges that Charles is a flawed, damaged human being, a product of a system that discarded him, and a man who survived by the only means he knew. The duality of the man, the gentle environmentalist who weeps for a moth and the rage-filled convict who dons a clan robe, resolves into a single, complex image. Mendez accepts both sides, refusing to discard the good because of the bad. He decides that the friendship was real, even if it was built on a foundation of shifting sands. Mendez embraces the identity he forged in that cell. He is Boxcar, the name bestowed upon him by the icon, a badge of honor that signifies his survival and his unique place in history. He accepts the title of the last member of the Manson family, not as a follower of a murderous cult, but as the final witness to the human being buried beneath the monster. He realizes that he has learned valuable lessons, even if they came from a twisted source. He has learned to question authority, to trust his own instincts, and to see the interconnectedness of all living things. He has learned that he can stand toe-to-toe with the devil and come away with his soul intact. He thinks about Charles's future, or the lack thereof. He knows that the old man will never leave prison. The parole hearings are a charade, a ritual of rejection that Charles endures with a mix of defiance and resignation. Mendez imagines the alternative life Charles spins in his head: the beachfront house in Malibu, the parties, the continued notoriety, and realizes it is a fantasy that sustains him in the face of a grim reality. Charles will die in a cage, his ashes likely unclaimed or scattered in a secret location to prevent his grave from becoming a shrine. He is a relic of a turbulent era, frozen in amber, while the world outside moves on. Mendez, however, is still moving. He applies the focus and discipline he observed in Charles to his own life. He pours his energy into his artwork, determined to create something of lasting value. He plans to write, to document the strange and terrible things he has seen, to give a voice to the experience of the convict. He sheds the anger that fueled his own violent past, replacing it with the stoic acceptance he learned on the tier. He understands now that true freedom is internal, that the mind can travel even when the body is shackled. He has graduated from the school of Charles Manson, taking the best of the curriculum and leaving the toxicity behind. The final image Mendez holds is not of the madman screaming at the guards or the manipulator spinning webs of lies, but of the artist. He sees the old man hunched over a piece of toilet paper, his fingers working with infinite patience to fashion a thing of beauty out of waste. He sees the resilience of the human spirit, the drive to create meaning in a vacuum. He feels a lingering affection, a sadness for the wasted potential, and a gratitude for the collision of their lives. He is no longer the angry young gang member who arrived at Corcoran. He is a survivor, a storyteller, and a man who has looked into the abyss and found a friend staring back. The story ends with Mendez finding peace in his new reality, carrying the permanent imprint of the old man's influence as he paints and writes in his cell, forever linked to the legend of Charles Manson but finally free to chart his own course through the remainder of his sentence.